Hello everybody, this is Mr. Rob and welcome back to another episode of the Las Vegas Athletics franchise here on MLB The Show 24, and today we have reached the first days of the All-Star break, which means it is time for the next MLB Draft. The 2028 MLB Draft is upon us, and it will be in the next episode because today we're going to go through a little bit of a draft preview, show you some of the top picks in this draft who should be, as well as maybe some players that we will target up and down the board. We're going to go through 30 prospects today and get to know them as we look at the next crop of talent to enter the league. If you're excited for this one, make sure you drop a like and you subscribe down below, especially if you want more franchise content, as we'll go ahead and preview the prospects. So we'll start off by looking at the top 5 prospects in this upcoming draft. As you can see on the left side, we have the 5th overall pick in this draft. We should have had the best odds for the number 1 pick, but what's been the case of this entire series, we have had bad luck in the draft lottery, and we've been knocked all the way to number 5, so we're going to have to live with it. But if we did have the number 1 pick, it seems like the number 1 consensus, both in our scouts department and the league, is that closing pitcher Jonathan Williams from Illinois is the top guy. He's dominated college baseball this year for the Fighting Illini. Throws a 4-seamer, a slider, a curveball, and a splitter. He's very solid. Has a lot of velocity on his pitches. Maybe needs to work on his control a little bit if there is a weakness, but Jonathan Williams seems like a slam dunk at number 1. And he's a guy, kind of like how we have Ayala this year, can really come out and be a closer starting next year if he gets picked by the Tampa Bay Rays, who have the number 1 pick. The second guy on our board who's in the top 5 for other scouts is the first position player. It's third baseman Rick Mayo, the 19-year-old who played this year for the USA travel team out of the state of Ohio. Solid bat, can play third base, can also play first. He's good for his defense. He's got some speed. Maybe the bat won't come around in terms of the power, but he's a solid guy overall who hits righty. Kind of reminds me a little bit of Charlie Rowe. Maybe not as much of a good hitter, but definitely has a little bit more pop than Rowe has. A smaller guy who can play the corner infield spots and get on base. And you're seeing how Charlie Rowe is playing for the Athletics. So Rick Mayo, if he gets to number 5, could potentially be a selection for the Las Vegas Athletics. The third guy is left fielder Brian Pitts, another 19-year-old who, like Rick Mayo, has been playing for the USA travel team. And it's really been a good spot for these players because they've been able to showcase themselves on the international front. Pitts, in my opinion, is a really good bat, and out of these top 5 guys, he might be my favorite position player. He's a switch hitter who can play all the outfield spots. 5'11", 176, a little bit smaller, but he is fast. He has good vision. He has good discipline. He can hit for contact. The power might not ever be there, but we've never really had a solidified spot in left field. And if we draft a guy like Brian Pitts, we would have our left fielder of the future more than likely. So Pitts is a guy that if he does fall to 5, I would have a very strong consideration at picking him at that pick. The 4th best guy on the board is another closing pitcher. It's Joey Kent, who, like Mayo and Pitts, has gone the international routes. He was born in Pennsylvania, but his parents are from Canada, so he's been playing for the Canada national team. A left-handed pitcher who can strike some guys out, limit the walks, limit the home runs. He's a guy that you can turn the ball over to in the 9th inning and feel pretty confident. I don't think he's as much of a slam dunk as Jonathan Williams. I think he is by far the better closer of the two, but Joey Kent could have a higher ceiling than Jonathan Williams. We'll have to see what happens with him, but I think he will also be a guy that you should have no problem with in the back half of ball games. Rounding out the top 5 is Sam Pedroza, a shortstop from Venezuela who's been playing at the University of Vanderbilt for some college ball. 6 foot at shortstop. He's a good guy who reminds me a lot of Brian Pitts just in the infield. He's got a good contact bat, good plate vision, good discipline. Maybe not as fast as Brian Pitts, and the power won't ever be there, which is why I do have Pitts ahead of Sam Pedroza. But he's a little bit older. He's a little bit more polished. I think he's more of a sure thing now if you want somebody right now. So now that we've gone through the top 5, we'll go through the positions. Starting off with the starting pitchers, and there is no starting pitcher who's a slam dunk top 5 pick, which is interesting. The top guy is Jay Fulton, who is more of a top 10 pick. A 19-year-old who's been playing for Australia, who throws a two-seamer, a changeup, a slider, and a splitter. I don't necessarily think he's top 10 worthy. I mean, nothing on this list really stands out. We've scouted him over 50%, so I don't think Jay Fulton is going to be a guy that we target, even though he's got the physical tools at 6'3", 202. Potential could be there, but he also could be a bust. Alfonso Sandoval's a pitcher I think I like a little bit more. He's a year younger, currently playing in Puerto Rico. He has committed to play for Oklahoma, but not sure if he'll go that route. He will probably get picked towards the back half of the first round. He's a guy who does a good job limiting walks, has good pitch control. Maybe not will be the strikeout kind of guy, but he has some solid stuff. Four-seamer, a running fastball, a curveball, and a changeup. I think he's a better pitcher, in my opinion, than Jay Fulton, and he's also a little bit younger. A little bit down the board, there's Clay Martinez, another guy from Staley High School out in Missouri, an 18-year-old who I think has, if you look at this scouting sheet, has the best tools of the guys that we've seen thus far, but we have not scouted him, so there is a chance that he's not as good as he looks. But if he is as good as he looks, he's a guy you could take in maybe the second round or one of those competitive balance picks that are kind of bonus picks anyway, and just might as well take a shot on a guy like Clay Martinez. Then we get to another guy down the board, Babe Reyes, who we've scouted a little bit. He is projected to go in the first round. Our scouts aren't as high on him, but I do like what I see out of the 18-year-old who currently hails from Frankfort High School out in West Virginia. 6'1", 200 pounds. Again, has the physical traits there. Throws a two-seamer, a slider, a changeup, a 12-6, and a splitter. So he's got some movement pitches. And he can also throw for pretty solid velocity despite not having a traditional four-seam fastball. So I do like a guy like Babe Reyes. If you were to somehow slide to the mid-rounds, maybe we go his route. Finally, rounding out the starting pitchers will be a guy who should be picked maybe into the third or fourth round. Vinny Quesada, an 18-year-old from Puerto Rico. I like the fact that he throws hard. I like the walks per nine being potentially high and his pitch control maybe being there. He's more of a developmental project than the guys that we've taken a look at, but a 6'1", 202 pounds who throws a four-seamer, a curve, a two-seamer, and a splitter. I think he's the guy who we could take with a pitcher. We have a lot of good pitching prospects in the organization, but it might not be a bad thing to add another one, especially if Quesada were to slide a little bit. Into the relief pitchers now. The top relief pitcher listed, is, even though we've talked about a couple closers, is Phil Trayer, a 18-year-old from Dakota Hudsonville in Michigan. You know, he's a good reason why he's listed as the top reliever. He's got some good stuff. The walks per nine does scare me a little bit. I've had a bad history with that stat, and it's always a good thing to be improving the bullpen. So Phil Trayer could be a guy. Yes, taking a relief pitcher in the first round is always risky, but I do think having a good relief and bullpen is a good thing, and I think Phil Trayer can definitely help in that regard. The other guy at the top is Mariano Davila, who's currently playing out in Spain, hailing originally from Florida. Intended to come back to the States to play college ball at UCF, but again, could go drafted instead. And I honestly think he's more polished than Trayer. He's a little bit more unknown, though, in my opinion, playing all the way over in Spain. But if he lives up to the potential that he could be, Davila could be a really good relief pitcher. 6'5", 233. The stamina could also come around as well. Maybe even convert him to a starting pitcher. So I think the upside on Davila is higher than Trayer, but I think right now Trayer is the more sure thing. I know we talked about a couple of closers. If you want to talk about one more, there is Antonio Diaz. If you're not willing to spend a top 5 pick on a closer, he's 21 years old, originally from Puerto Rico, currently plays for the Seminoles of Florida State. He's another solid all-around closing pitcher. Demands a lot of bonus, though, with 8.1, so might have to pay up if you try to go after a guy like Antonio Diaz. We'll go into the position players now, starting off with catcher. There's only one catcher that we're going to talk about today. It's the top catcher on the board. We're pretty set with catcher with Tyler Soderstrom and I think Daniel Susak coming around now, so I'm not really going to splurge for a catcher. But PJ Favre's a good catcher, the 18-year-old from Friends Academy out in New York, who can definitely throw out some base runners. Definitely more of a defensive catcher, in my opinion, than an offensive catcher. But that's kind of what you need nowadays with some of these fast base stealers. So I think PJ Favre could be that defensive catcher who plays every day, but maybe hits towards the back half of the lineup. Over to first base now. Charlie Rose really starting to break out for us. And with him breaking out, we're not really looking for a first baseman right now. There's only 2 that showed up on our top 100 board anyway. It's kind of a weak first base class. Dan Byler is the top guy. Draft rank in the 70s for us. So nobody's really too high on him. From Del Barton High School out in New Jersey. I mean, the power is never going to be there. Those power numbers right now are god-awful. The vision, the discipline could come around, but he's definitely a project at first base. There's also Derek Lutz, who I think is a little bit more polished than Byler, also 18 years old from Fishers High School in Indiana. The pop is a little bit better than Byler, but again, a lot of these first basemen that we've seen in recent years do not have the most pop. And at 6'3", you'd expect a little bit more out of the lefty. Does hit for pretty good contact, does have good vision, does have good discipline, so there are some traits there. But the corner infield spot is usually where we want some power, so I don't think you're going to get it from these 2. At second base, we did sign Stott to the 4-year contract, and we do have Zach Geloff behind him, but there's really no long-term second baseman on the roster anymore. Geloff has kind of fallen out of favor in terms of his long-term potential, so maybe you go with second baseman. Top second baseman on the board is Kevin Weinstein, who currently also plays for the Illinois Fighting Illini. Good contact bat. There's some pop there as well. He's a fast guy. I think he's a solid guy. And we have him at draft rank 10, which means he should be around for our top pick. And I might like a guy like Kevin Weinstein. He's going to be on the short list. 6'5" for a second baseman, really tall, switch hitter. I like the tools here. I think Kevin Weinstein could be a guy that we look at in the first round this year. There's also Bert Sanchez, who's a fringe first rounder, maybe a compensatory pick. 18 years old from Cretin-Dermot Hall High School, also out in Minnesota. Good contact, better power pop against the lefties, good vision, good discipline. Although the potential might not be high, he's one of those guys that maybe caps out at where he's currently at. So you're going to get what you get with Bert Sanchez when you draft him. You just hope you get a good Bert Sanchez. Last second baseman we'll take a look at is Stan Ponce, 21 years old from UCLA currently. He's another good contact bat in the later rounds that you could potentially draft. 5'10", 190, also can play some short. So Stan Ponce, if you want to wait to get your second baseman, he's the guy that I would wait on. At third baseman, we've taken a look at Rick Mayo. He's the top third baseman. There's also a couple of other ones that I like. Zach Herman, we've scouted a lot. He currently is from the University of Florida, originally from Puerto Rico. He kind of reminds me of those Robbie Martin type of guys that we've already got, where he's already pretty good. The potential is more of a sure thing, even though I think he's more of a defensive guy than an offensive guy, unlike Martin. But he's a guy who's been playing 4 years of college ball. He's almost MLB ready in terms of right now. So if you want a third baseman now, Zach Herman's your guy. But we do have Jacob Wilson, who I like, who made an all-star team last year, 8 potential. So I'm not really in a hurry to pick a third baseman. The other guy on my third baseman list is Joshua Kim, as a top 100 guy. And right now it says he's at least a B potential, which is not bad for the middle rounds. I know that thing really stands off in terms of his ratings. He's definitely a developmental guy. But if you can get some B potential in the later rounds, I think Joshua Kim's the guy you target. Currently playing for the Wisconsin Badgers. I do like maybe Kim as a potential mid-round guy. Over to shortstop, where we definitely drafted and have a lot of good shortstops in the system. Robbie Martin is the top shortstop. There's also Logan Davidson. We've drafted Richie Beach. Just to name a few of the shortstops. Hampton as well. So trying to avoid another logjam at that position. We've taken a look at Sanford, Georgia. The only other shortstop that I was going to mention is Alexis Amoris, who is another high floor kind of guy who could potentially break out. Again, very much a developmental project. He's been playing for New Mexico, so he's been tearing it up in the Mountain West, but scouts are a little concerned as to how that'll translate to the major league level. So if you want to take a risk on a guy like Alexis Amoris, you could hit, but you could also find a guy who maybe never develops into the potential that he possibly could be. Out to the outfield now. This is where we have a lot of prospects. Like I said, left field, we've never really found the left fielder of the future for this team. I mean, Elliot Ramos has never really come around fully on the bat. And there's a good bit of left fielders here. If you don't get a guy like Brian Pitts, there's also Luis Mitre, who could be a potential first rounder. 18 years old from Mounds View High School in Minnesota. I like the contact. I like the defense. But he is currently injured, and that could scare some scouts away, including the Las Vegas Athletics. My favorite left fielder, though, is probably Al Grantham. Favorite left fielder not named Brian Pitts. 18 years old from Hornsman School in New York. This guy has pop. That's something I haven't seen a lot with a lot of these guys. He can hit for power. Might lack on the contact, but that power is definitely noticeable. Now, the thing with him is he's projected to go in the 20s. So if you pick him at pick 5, you are definitely reaching on Al Grantham. This would be a great time for the Athletics if you could trade down, but unfortunately you cannot. So he might not be around for the second pick, and I just don't know if it's worth taking him in a top 5 selection. But Al Grantham's a guy that I definitely want to see happens to him in this draft. Over to center field now. Kenny Moeller is the top guy out here, 20 years old from Canada. He's been playing for their travel team. Good contact, good speed. He can cover a lot of distance out there in center field. Kind of reminds me, though, of Pedro Pineda, who's a guy that we have in the system currently. And we also have Kevin Alcantara, who's currently manning center field. So, not sure if Kenny Moeller is a guy who's worth it, but he might go as a top 10 pick. There's also William Park, who should go in the first round as well. A more solid floor guy who's been playing for the Hoosiers at Indiana. Good speed, definitely more of a defensive center fielder in my book. 5'10", 164, can get around the outfield, cover a lot of grass for you. And there's also Edgar Valencia, who's a guy who MLB scouts have in the top 10. We're not as high on. Currently plays for the Penn State Nittany Lions. The contact is there for him, and he's got very good vision and speed. So I think he's more of a polished guy who's at 21 years old on the older side, but has definitely seen some action and could get to the big league relatively sooner. He did opt out of his exam, though, his doctor's exam, so that's something to keep an eye on. Lastly, we'll go over to the right fielders. We do have a trio of these guys. Elliot Matson's at the top, the 18-year-old from Brother Rice High School in Illinois. Again, good contact, good vision, good discipline potentially, but there's just not a lot of power there. Not sure why a lot of these guys can't develop the power trait like we've seen in years past. He's a good defender as well, though, 5'10", 206. Just don't know if he'll be the first guy for the Athletics, but he definitely should be a guy who goes in the first round. There's also Rene Ortega, who, if you remember, is a guy that the Athletics originally drafted, but never signed with the team. And instead, he's been playing for the Michigan State Spartans, and then he transferred to LSU, so he's been around the block. But Rene Ortega is a guy who we've seen before, and it could potentially draft again. Now, unfortunately for him, his stock has not really improved a lot, which is a little intriguing to notice as a guy that we drafted in the past. But Rene Ortega is back in the draft after going to college. And then the last guy we'll take a look at is right fielder Angel Terrero, the 19-year-old who's been playing for the USA travel team out of Texas. The guy who's got some pop, but doesn't hit for a lot of contact. He's going to be a guy who hits your home runs, but does not hit for the highest average. But he can also play some defense with a cannon of an arm. So he's your boomer bust corner outfielder that I've kind of expected the position to be. But we do have Clark Elliott out there who's been pretty solid for us as well. But Angel Toro doesn't have the same skill set as Clark Elliott. So if you want a guy maybe in the later rounds who is a little bit different than who we currently got on our roster, I think we should definitely be targeting Angel Toro. Well, there's the 30 prospects of this year's draft that we're going to take a look at. Let me know in the comments section below who you like. Who do you think the Athletics should go with the 5th overall pick, and who we should potentially target for the later rounds. If you guys enjoy, make sure you drop that like, you subscribe down below, especially if you want more franchise content. This is Mr. Rob, and I'll see you in the next one.